بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب يسر ولا تؤسر وتممه لنا بالخير يا فتاه يا فتاه يا فتاح. Respected brothers and elders, mothers and sisters in Islam, truly it is an immense mercy, infinite karam and absolute blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon all of us, that He has gathered us on this Mubarak day of Ramadan to sit down, to reflect and to understand and to learn the aspect of deen which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made mandatory upon many. Subhanallah, so scholars have mentioned a very important point, that those actions in Islam which are fard, meaning an obligation upon an individual, then it is also obligatory upon you to learn how to do those actions as well. And I repeat myself, many a times this concept is misunderstood. So the actions which are mandatory upon an individual, faridah, for example, salah, is mandatory upon a certain individual. When they reach a certain age of their life, they reach puberty, now salah became fard. So now for them to learn how to make that faridah is also fard. For example, a person upon whom Allah has given ability and istidat to do hajj, and now they have to fulfill the faridah of hajj, it is an obligation upon them to learn how to do that properly as well. Same way for those individuals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon wealth and ability to give, it is indeed faridah, it's an obligation upon them to learn how to give zakat as well. Many a times things continue in our life and they continue without even us learning. All right? They say in Urdu, bachpan se pachpan tak. The way that we learn the salah in bachpan goes till pachpan and even further. Right? 5 to 55 is the same thing. So we never get a chance in actually aspects to learn. So in reality, to give a little bit of our time, inshallah, and to learn about this great faridah is of course, a means of ajr, a reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we know that zakat is one of those important pillars of Islam, which defines the monetary devotion of an individual. There are certain aspects in Islam which are your physical devotion, such as us making salah. Spiritually and physically, we are devoting ourselves for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are cutting our ties from the outside world, and we are coming out in the masjid, and we are saying Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest subhanahu wa ta'ala, and leaving behind the dunya, and our physical devotion is being connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then there are certain aspects which require both monetary and physical devotion, such as hajj. In hajj, you're spending your wealth, and along with that, you are giving your physical devotion for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then of course, fasting, such as physical devotion that we are all going through, mashallah, at this moment. And then of course, zakat itself, which shows the monetary devotion. And subhanallah, a few days back, in the ayats of the Quran that we usually go over in the recitation of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alamin. Allahu Akbar. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam announced to the people that my salah, my nusuk, the word nusuk in Arabic comes from the same word where the word manasik comes from, which when we speak about hajj, they say manasikul hajj. And that's why a person who has fully devoted themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you call this person a nasik, an individual who has fully devoted themselves for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So nusuki in reality means all sorts of devotion that a person has given for the sake of Allah. My life, my death is all for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in reality, our mal, our wealth, and all that we have, to spend it in the proper manner, in reality, this is an important aspect that we should take our time and of course learn. Scholars have mentioned that denying of this obligation, and Allahu Akbar, many exist, denying of the obligation of giving zakat can take a person out of the fold of Islam. Because these are the foundations and the fundamentals of Islam. So if an individual denies and says there's no zakat, na'udhu billah, they might even, make themselves go out of the fold of Islam. Allah, quick thing I'll share with you. When the Nabi of Allah ﷺ left the face of this earth, and subhanAllah, this was one of the saddest day on the face of this earth, and of course extremely difficult for the Sahaba to see when the Nabi of Allah ﷺ passed away from the face of this earth. And as we know that when the Nabi of Allah ﷺ passed away, a lot of false powers, or meaning wrong and evil, began to erupt in the premises of Medina. Na'udhu billah, there were certain individuals who proclaimed themselves to be, na'udhu billah, the false prophets. Musaylama Kadhab, a woman known as, she also got up and she says, na'udhu billah, I'm the next prophet. Musaylama, who was a big liar, he got up and he says, I'm Allah. So a group of individuals started proclaiming false prophecies. One wrong. Second thing, a group of individuals, na'udhu billah, started to leave Islam who were, very weak. And the third group of individuals were those who said, we will not give zakat as we used to give at the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We used to give zakat properly at the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now he's gone, I'm not going to give zakat properly. So amongst the things which were the foundations of the evil which generated right after the demise of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of them was not giving zakat properly. That's why Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu got up and he said, for the person who gave an entire camel with a string in zakat, in charity for the sake of Allah in the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gives an entire camel, he doesn't give a string, I'm going to fight with him. Ayanqusu deenu wa ana hayy. How can I stay alive when anything lessens in the deen of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Meaning, so zakat was something which shaitan penetrated in the hearts of the people to make them go away, right? Because the love of mal sometimes even increases above the love of anything else, right? Allahu Akbar. May Allah forgive. You will find individuals that for mal and wealth and few pennies, they will sacrifice their own loved ones. They will sacrifice their beautiful relations for mal and wealth. Right? How many times you see brothers from the same womb of the mother don't speak to each other just because of mal and wealth? The money wasn't transferred properly. The inheritance wasn't given properly. Mal is the means of the destruction of the hearts of the humanity. That's why at the time of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, we don't have to. Mal is a need and necessity. But when the love becomes a part of our lives, our hearts, it drowns us. Right? That's why Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu at the time of his khilafah, when the gold from the different areas, 2.2 square million miles of the world had spread Islam inside, when the mal and the wealth was coming to Medina, so much wealth that a man standing on one side couldn't see the other person, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, seeing this, was crying. Everyone was happy. Fatuhat and victory for the Muslims. Umar radiallahu anhu is crying. They said, oh Umar, this is a time of victory. Allah gave us so much now. He says, if this was any khair, then I would have definitely seen this condition in the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if this was going to get any khair to us, then indeed we have never missed out in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anyways, so zakat is something in which, because of the love of the mal in the hearts of the people, it's more likely that a person leaves this. I share with you one ayat of the Quran, then we go to a hadith, and then inshallah we'll break down this program for you. The ayah of the Quran, inshallah, of course, I don't have time to discuss a lot of details of it. Surah Tawbah, chapter 9, verse 34 and verse number 35. Sit with some scholars and discuss this ayat of the Quran and learn this. I don't know if it will be possible, but I would request you, if we have some cards or pencils, maybe you can write something. If you have something, make sure that it will be a lot of things that you would love to store for yourself when we come to the aspect of zakat afterwards. The ayat of the Quran is Surah Tawbah, chapter number 9, verse number 34. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and I read this ayat of the Quran to you. As for those who accumulate gold and silver and do not spend it in the way of Allah, give them the good news of the painful punishment. Allahu Akbar. Only if we knew the eloquence of Quran. The ayat of the Quran, whenever they use the word bashir, basharat, it's known for giving glad tidings. Kisi ko achhi khabar dena, basharat. To give someone a good news, you say bashir. If a person is giving a news which is of warning, you say nadhiran. That's why the two qualities Allah says, bashiran wa nadhira. The one who gives glad tidings and the one who warns. So whenever the Quran speaks about bashir, bashirhum, give them the glad tidings, usually it's the news of Jannah, news of khair and blessings. Allahu Akbar. This ayat of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changes it a little. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَبَشِّرْهُمْ, give them the glad tidings of a severe punishment. Meaning for them who enjoy their mal and wealth, as though they think that it's leading them towards greatness, adhab alim. Severe punishment, Allah mentions. And before that, He doesn't said, warn them, but He says, give them the good news. Give them the news for all the mal and the wealth that made them happy, and if they have not done this for the sake of Allah. The ayat of the Quran continues, on the day, meaning the day of Qiyamah, the wealth will be heated up in the fire of Jahannam. This is the ayat of the Quran. Then their foreheads and their sides and their backs shall be branded with it. And then this is what you have accumulated from yourself, so taste what you have accumulated. This is Surah Tawbah, verse number 34 and 35. I share with you two ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Rasulullah ﷺ said, Hadith of al-Bukhari, the person to whom Allah has bestowed wealth, and he or she does not give zakat, on the day of resurrection, this wealth will be turned into venomous serpents, snakes. And the snake will go and wind around the neck of this individual and will begin to bite him. Rasulullah ﷺ said, then the snake will speak to him and say, I'm your wealth, I'm your treasure. I'm your wealth, I'm your treasure. One day, the second hadith that I will mention, and then I will get to the breakdown of zakat. One day on the day of Eid, Rasulullah ﷺ, after going to the Eid Salah, the Prophet ﷺ had seen the men who had come for Eid. He had also seen the women folk who were present for Eid. The Prophet ﷺ, while going through, passing by the women folk who had come in for the Eid, the Nabi of Allah ﷺ said, when I was taken to the Mi'raj, when I was taken to the heavens, I had seen that the excessive amount of individual in the fire of Jahannam were women folk. The woman began to say, O Prophet of Allah, for what reason? For what reason did you excessively see women folk in Jahannam? Allahu Akbar. The Nabi of Allah says two reasons. The first thing the Nabi of Allah said, that they are not grateful for what their husbands have provided for them. Meaning, a husband will do all of their life in serving and providing, and if one thing doesn't come true to their needs, she will say, you never kept me happy. This hadith of Rasulullah. And brothers and sisters, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. We cannot measure everyone with the same stick. But Rasulullah on the other side also mentioned, ad-dunya mata'un. This dunya is just a matter. This dunya is just, something which is, as they say, something which is mata, something which is just useless. But then Rasulullah said, وَخَيْرُ الْمَتَى, but the best of the thing that you can find in this dunya is mar'atu salihah, a pious woman. That's what Rasulullah said. On one side, Rasulullah is reminding the woman. Right? But on the other side, the Nabi of Allah is explaining the honor and the dignity of a woman in Islam too. A-dunya mata'un, this dunya is just things. وَخَيْرُ الْمَتَى, and the best of the thing that anyone can have in this dunya is mar'atu salihah, a pious wife. This is what Rasulullah said. So the Nabi of Allah said, I saw excessive amount of women in Jahannam. First reason, they are ungrateful to their spouses for what they had provided for them. Second thing Rasulullah said, for the love of mal and gold and not giving zakat. These are the two things that Rasulullah said that I saw the most women in Jahannam. Now, my dear respected brothers and elders, we come to the aspect of zakat itself. This is more of a casual, informal setting. If I say something you don't understand, please feel free to ask a question, and I will be able to explain it further. At the end of this session, inshallah, we're going to have a Q&A, and we can sit down personally and speak about some detailed questions that you might have as well. The way that, inshallah, we're going to conduct this in the few minutes, inshallah, that we have, it might prolong a little, so inshallah, please bear with me. The first thing that we will be discussing, inshallah, is upon whom zakat is obligatory. Meaning, what are the conditions for zakat to become obligatory upon an individual. Second thing that we will be discussing, inshallah, is what wealth, which type of money do I have to give zakat upon? And that I will call an Arabic and English word mixed together, zakatable wealth. Zakatable, all right? So it's English and Arabic mixed together. So what is your zakatable wealth? Meaning that money or what types of wealth, requires that we should give zakat upon. The third thing that we will speak about, inshallah, is what types of wealth you don't have to give zakat upon. There are certain types of wealth that you don't have to give zakat upon. So what are those types of wealth? The fourth thing that we will be speaking about are few words which are repeated in zakat again and again, such as nisab. What is nisab? What is quantum? What is that bare minimum threshold line that Prophet ﷺ drew for us? What is the passing of the year? Meaning you must have the money in your possession for 1 year, what we hear again and again. In Arabic, that word is called hawl. We will speak about the word hawl. We will speak about the word nisab, meaning the literal terms and what they mean in that. The next thing, inshallah, that we will be speaking about is some of the methods of how to pay your zakat. Some of the methods of paying your zakat. The next thing that we will be speaking about, inshallah, I'll repeat all of this in much detail, is to whom that we can give zakat, meaning masarif. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran that there are 8 types of people who can receive zakat. So we will speak about the masarif, the individual upon whom they can take the zakat. Then we will speak about zakat can be given to which relatives and which relatives cannot take zakat and who cannot take zakat. And then we can speak about some of the contemporary issues regarding stocks and bonds and 401ks. That will be all the way at the end, inshallah. So this is the breakdown, inshallah, for the program that we have. We also, inshallah, going to have a live program as well. And of course, this will be recorded and you can go back to your references afterwards as well. So now upon whom zakat is fard. So how do we sitting here and the sisters present, how do I know that if I have to give zakat? Or how do we, realize and visualize that upon whom there is zakat? There's a big misconception in many families that if the father pays the zakat, the wife, she has tons of gold, the children are all earning, and they say, you know what, the dad gave zakat and we don't have to give anything, right? That's the usual misconception. Or usually what happens is, and this is a little off tracking, but I want to mention this as well, that many a times when the time of Eidul Adha comes, the time of sacrifice, they say, oh, our dad did a qurbani, that's enough for the whole family. It's usually for every individual who has the position of nisab that they must give their own specific qurbani and sacrifice. So there's so much misconception in the ummah regarding giving the wealth as well. Because subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful. Allah is Kareem. And I was hearing from one of the scholars saying so beautifully that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, نَحْنُ قَسَمْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ مَعِيشَتَهُمْ. Allah says, it is me who divided the wealth between all of you. Allah made someone rich, Allah gave someone less. This is all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one controls anyone's rizq, wallahi. This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why Hatim al-Asim rahmatullah alayhi said that I never felt jealous from any possession, because I read the ayat of the Quran, نَحْنُ قَسَمْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ مَعِيشَتَهُمْ. It is Allah who gave this mal to this man. Why should I ever be unhappy for what Allah gave someone, right? If Allah gave someone, then why should I feel bad? Why should I burn my heart for someone else's wealth? This is Allah who gave this individual. So now Allah differentiated and gave and distributed the wealth upon the humanity. نَحْنُ قَسَمْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ مَعِيشَتَهُمْ is the ayat of the Quran. Some Allah gave more, some Allah gave less. Subhanallah, ulama have mentioned if every man and woman on the face of this earth, upon whom zakat is mandatory, if they were to give zakat properly and to give it to the right individuals, there will remain no poor person on the face of this earth. Because Allah is the one who's Kareem. Allah takes care of people. Allah has decided, وَمَا مِن دَابَةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ رِزْقُهَا, that nothing walks and crawls on the face of this earth except that the risk is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The risk has come. So Allah has made their risk through some way. So if only we gave our zakat properly. So now upon whom is zakat? Many a times I don't even consider myself eligible, right, of giving zakat itself. So what are the criterias and the foundations? Zakat is fard upon that individual. First condition, a Muslim. Iman is a condition. Of course, being a Muslim, ahkamat and the rulings come upon us. Second condition, being an adult. There is a differences of opinion amongst the scholars. Imam al-Shafi rahmatullah alayhi says that if a child is not adult, meaning not an adult in Islam means haven't reached the age of puberty, bulughat, meaning they have not become baligh or they have not reached the age of puberty. According to Imam al-Shafi rahmatullah alayhi, if that child possesses and have wealth more than the amount which is required to give zakat, then their parents will be responsible to give zakat on behalf of that child, either from their own side or from the wealth of that child. According to Imam al-Shafi, there's no condition of being a baligh and adult. According to Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, there is a condition. that a person must be an adult, baligh, in order for the zakat to become mandatory upon them. If there's a child who has or she has money more than the nisab, and they have not reached the age of adulthood and it's their own possession, there is no zakat upon them until they don't reach puberty or they become adult in Islam, and the zakat will become mandatory upon them. So being a Muslim, secondly, being an adult. The third thing is being sane, meaning sahibul aql, meaning having intellectual capabilities. May Allah forgive if a person is insane or a person does not have sanity or have some illness that they don't know what's going around them, then the ahkamat and the rulings will not apply upon them. And the fourth thing is, as condition, a person must have the ownership of the required nisab, the required amount which Rasulullah ﷺ mentioned. If that much is in our possession, which we'll speak about just shortly, if these four conditions upon any individual, zakat is fard upon them. And I repeat again, Muslim, adult, sane, and the amount of wealth which is required to be in their possession, this will make zakat mandatory, obligatory, and fard upon them. Now, subhanAllah, we continue further upon what type of wealth do we have to give zakat upon. And these are known as your zakatable wealths. The first type of zakatable wealth, or the wealth that you have to give zakat upon, is gold and silver. And gold and silver be in the form of jewelry, be in the form of utensils, be in the form of any way if you have gold and silver. White gold also counts as gold. Platinum and other metals don't count, which we'll speak about later. Gold and white golds and silver are those precious metals upon which there is zakat upon. This will be considered your assets, things that you have as your earnings. So be it jewelry, be it in the form of utensils, be it in any other form, if it's gold and silver. Be it 22, be it 24, be it 20, 18, whatever carats it might be. As long as more than 50% of that matter is gold itself or silver itself. Second thing, which is your zakatable wealth, is your cash or the money which is in your checkings and your savings. Meaning the cash that it's in your hand, or that cash or the wealth which is present in your savings or your checkings. Third thing, loans that you have lent to others, knowing that you will definitely get this mal and wealth back. Your brother was in extreme need. He or your sister was in need, and they asked for $5,000. You gave them. And now you know that they're not going to run away. They're going to give you back. And they're saying, inshallah, inshallah. They're delaying it. And now, but you're sure that they are giving. They haven't denied that they are not going to give. As long as you know that mal that you lent someone as a loan will come back to you, you have to calculate zakat upon that mal every year, even though you don't have that money with you at the moment. So the mal and the wealth that you lent someone, knowing that you will get this money from the other individual for sure, this is your zakatable wealth. That's your wealth upon which you will calculate as your assets. Number 4. Merchandise for businesses. Meaning if a person has a store, a person has a running business, and within this business there is merchandise. For example, take it as a grocery store or corner store. And a person has tons of inventory inside. The fixtures of that store and business have no zakat upon. Meaning the fixtures within the stores, the tables, the chairs, the machines, whatever it is that are fixtures, there is no zakat. A person has a factory, there's tons of machinery inside. A person has a construction business, they have tons of equipment. There's no zakat upon the fixtures or the equipment itself, but the merchandise itself. And the merchandise which is inside of that business, you will take the zakat upon that. But of course, when the merchandise is inside the store or the business of an individual, there are two types of individuals. Either they own that merchandise, or either they are having it, and as soon as they sell it, they will repay the true owners of the money. So if it's your possession in the merchandise, then you pay zakat upon. If you still have to pay for that merchandise and you are selling it, then there is no zakat upon that. livestocks, and of course, that doesn't count for us now here. And subhanAllah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to an extent, on the amount of camels and horses and cows and sheep, he even laid down foundations of this much aspects of detail regarding livestocks as well. Of course, we're not going to the details. So your zakatable wealth are gold and silver, be it jewelry, be it utensils in any form. Second zakatable wealth is your cash, either in your possession or your checkings and your savings. The third type of your zakatable wealth is the loans that you lent others, knowing that you will be getting it back. Fourth type of your zakatable wealth is your investments in businesses, meaning not your fixtures, but merchandises and inventory which you own, and these are all of value for you. Livestocks we will leave. The sixth thing is the income from the properties. I'm going to take 2 minutes to go a little bit more deeper in properties. Properties are of two types. A property which is used to earn rental income. Meaning a person has a property which they completely own, might be, whatever X amount of price, 100,000, a million, whatever it is, and they are receiving rental income from this property. They have no plans of selling this place. This is just used to have a recurring income. In that specific case, the only thing that they will give zakat upon is the rental income which your property generates. There is no zakat upon the value of that property or that house or that business. But the income that property generates, only on that rental value, you will give zakat after the expense. So for example, a person has a house. They have their own house that they live in. They have a second house that's not for their own use, but it's for rental. This house costs $100,000. There's no zakat upon that $100,000, but this house gives them $2,000 rent every month. At the end of the year, this house generates $24,000. But they got to give taxes, they got to do repairs, they got to do paintings, they got to do all the other stuff, maintenance. And at the end of the year, it only remains with $10,000 to $15,000 from that house. So it's not the gross rent which is coming in, but it's the saving at the end of the year from the rental value of that property. I hope that's clear. Second type of property has three other scenarios. So this is rental income. That's out of the picture now, property. Second type of property has three subgroups. That is, person A goes to sign up and buy. A person A is going to buy a property, be it open land, as they say, zameen, or be it a built house, or be it a building, anything. A person is about to sign to buy a specific property, be it a land, be it a house, be it anything. Now they're about to sign on the line to buy this house. When a person was about to sign on this line, they made firm irada and intention that this is, a steal for me to actually get this house in such a low price. I'm going to buy this house, and inshallah, as soon as the price fluctuates higher, I'm going to sell it. A person bought a land, property, house, anything, and the time of signing, their firm intention was, I bought this for the reason of reselling when I get a higher price. Whenever they have to give zakat, they will give zakat on the entire value of the face value of that house or that property every single year. If it's an open land sitting there that you haven't sold, but you bought it for the reason of reselling, you will give zakat on the entire value of that land. You bought that house to resell. You bought the house for 100,000, waiting for it to go to 200,000. Now the zakat time comes, you have to give zakat on the face value and the market value of that house. Because you bought that house or that property for the reason of reselling, right? Let's go back. That same individual, person A, is about to sign on that line again. That same property, but now he or she says, I'm going to keep this property to maybe build something on this. Or maybe I'll keep it to give it to my kid, my son, my daughter, and I'm not going to sell it. I'm going to keep it for myself. And they sign that paper. Now when the time of zakat comes, person A will not give any zakat on that property. May be that your second, your third, or your fourth property. It doesn't have to be your own individual place of residence. So long as you did not have intention to sell at the time of buying that property. Third individual, same scenario. Person A is sitting down again, about to sign on that paper. And person A goes, I'm not sure. Should I sell it? Should I keep it? Should I give it to my kids? Should I make a madrasa on it? A lot of time that happens, subhanAllah, right? People, Be saying stuff like that. So now, what should I do with it? So this person, as they say, kashmakash, they're in like deep thoughts. Like, what am I going to do about it? So in that specific case, there is no zakat upon that individual until they sell that, make the profit, and the profit comes to their own ownership. So in the case you are not sure, and that's many a times, you're not sure what you're going to do with that property, there is no zakat upon that until you sell it and you make that money and that comes back to you. So this is regarding the property. I hope this is clear. If not clear, inshallah, let me know. I can go in more detail. So first we talked about rental property, only upon the rent after the expense. A property which is not for rent, it may be personal or reselling. If you're buying it for the reason and niyyah of reselling, zakat on the entire thing every single year. Second, a person is not sure, is completely firm that I'm not going to resell it, there's no zakat. Third individual, they're not sure, there is no zakat upon that as well. Now we come to types of wealth in which there is no zakat. The types of wealth which there is no zakat. So the first thing that we talked about was zakatable wealth, non-zakatable wealth. This is your wealth, but there is no zakat upon that. First of all the metals beside gold and silver, and again, I mentioned white gold as well as being a part of zakatable wealth, and all the metals beside gold and silver, as long as they are not bought for the reasons of business. If a person bought platinum for the reasons of business, that's their work. They buy and sell platinum. So in that case, they would have to give zakat. So any metal beside gold and silver, which is not bought for the reason a person needs and they're for business, and if it's for business, then it's zakatable. And if it's not for business, to your personal use, there is no zakat upon that. Fixtures, fittings, machinery, factory, delivery vehicles, whatever things which are needed to operate a business, there is no zakat upon that as well. There's no zakat upon that at all. Fixtures, fittings, machinery, factory, delivery, vehicles, or all those things which are used to operate a business, there is no zakat upon that. Even though that's your wealth, there is no zakat upon that. Diamonds, pearls, precious stones, semi-precious stones, all of them have no zakat so long as they are not for the reasons of business. If a person buys and sells diamonds for the reasons of making money, there is zakat upon it. But if a sister has a diamond which she has for her own personal needs, there is no zakat upon that, right? There's no zakat upon diamond and the value of diamond or any other precious stones or semi-precious stones as well. Jewelry, now imitations, there are so many out there which, subhanAllah, now are even tied like almost the same price as real stuff now. So imitation jewelry, be like, even though it looks like gold or even like it looks like silver, there is no zakat upon that as well. Living quarters, meaning places where a person lives, household furnitures, personal clothings, things that we have in our houses that we might even not use on daily basis. And subhanAllah, even though Islam stops extravagance, israf, but even if someone has all of those things, there is no zakat upon excessive things that you have of your own. For example, a person has tons of clothing that they never even touched in the year. A person has so many beddings in the house that they never even use. They have so many utensils which are present in the house that they don't even use. These are all excessive wealth that they have. There is no zakat upon the things which are your needs and of course might be used sometimes or not. So these are your non-zakatable items. Now this is an important point to understand the details upon the few words in Arabic. Nisab. What is nisab? Nisab is that amount of wealth which makes one liable to give zakat. Nisab in Arabic means the amount of wealth which makes one liable to give zakat. And zakat itself is actually a threshold line which differentiates for those who will give zakat, who will not give zakat, for those who will receive zakat, and for those who will not receive zakat. And zakat nisab has been confirmed and mentioned from the hadith of Rasulullah which is present, which we will be speaking about just momentarily. Second thing in zakat, one is nisab, that you must possess a certain amount of wealth. Second thing in zakat is that you must possess the wealth for a certain amount of time. And how long is that time? In Arabic, that time is known as hawl. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He speaks about a mother feeding a child and nursing a child, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Hawlaini kamilain, for 2 continuous years, meaning 2 lunar years for the child and nursing of the child. When we speak about zakat, zakat time frame is also 1 hawl, which means 1 running lunar calendar. And let me make this very, very easy. Shaykh Mufti Usmani Sadamat Barakatuh Aliyah has mentioned a very, very easy concept of giving zakat. The easiest way to give zakat for any one of us. If we don't know anything, this will be the easiest way. That is, for every one of us present here right now, as amongst brothers and sisters, for those who are listening to us, do this. Fix 1 day in the Islamic calendar, in the lunar calendar, to be the day of your zakat. Fix 1 day in the lunar calendar. If you do the other calendars as January, February, March, then you're losing out on 10 days every year, because the lunar calendar is 10 days lesser than the other calendar. So fix 1 day in the lunar calendar as the day of your zakat. So for example, I'm giving you an example. Many people choose Ramadan because every farida is multiplied 70 times. And every optional action is turned into a farida. So everyone wants to give their zakat in Ramadan. So if you give $1, Allah will give you $70 ajr. I mean, everything is multiplied many folds. So now fix 1 date or day to be the day of your zakat. So let's take a scenario, an open picture, that all of us, or take my example, I fix 15th Ramadan to be the day of my zakat. No matter, what corresponding date it comes to be, 15th Ramadan is my day of zakat. My hawl, my way of calculating zakat is that I will see every 15th of Ramadan and I will audit myself for my zakat. Things will become very easy. I'll give you an example. Imagine me, Farhan, an individual in year 2014, 1435, last Ramadan, on the 15th of Ramadan, I had the possession of $10,000 at the end of the 15th of Ramadan, meaning all of my expenses, my liabilities, all of them were taken out, and me, individual A, only, at the end of the year, on the 15th of Ramadan, my calculations from all of my zakatable wealth. Let's recount our zakatable wealth. Our gold and silver, be it jewelry and utensils, our cash, be it in the form of cash, liquid, or be in the form of checkings and savings, be in the third, the wealth that we have lent, other loans that we will be getting back, your merchandises and your investments in your businesses, your properties which generate wealth, or your properties in general which have value, all of them added together, my value, example, was $10,000 last year. I gave zakat upon that in last Ramadan, on the 15th of Ramadan. Now the year passes, Ramadan goes, Shawwal comes. The 10,000 in all of my assets become 12,000. Next month comes, it goes back to 8,000. And now it goes back to 15. It goes back to 7. So the whole year, the money is fluctuating. The money is going up and down. I bought my family a piece of gold in the middle of the year, meaning ups and downs are happening. All the mal and wealth in my possession is not with me for an entire year, because money is fluctuating, ups and downs. Now the next year, 15th of Ramadan comes. Again, mashallah, this Ramadan comes. I sit down and I get all of my zakatable wealth. I count all of them, and the money comes out to be 15,000 this year. So all the fluctuations that I had seen in the year, I don't have to worry about that. Don't worry about all of those fluctuations. The only thing that a person who needs to give zakat, they need to worry about is the day that they choose for their zakat. That day you're going to audit yourself. So quickly, for our sisters and our mothers, if you have gold, brothers, sisters and mothers, the best thing for you is get your gold and get your silver, whatever it is, and get it weighed once. Measure it, weigh it, and write the amount of grams in your ownership and know the grams of it. If you buy and sell anything during the course of the year, just add on to the grams. Don't take your gold every year and get it measured and get it weighed. Write the amount of grams that you have. For example, a sister has 400 grams of gold. When the time of 15th of Ramadan comes, she will only go and check the price of what gold is, 22, 24, whatever carat gold she has, multiply it by the amount of grams which is being sold, and she will get her amount. So for the sisters, the best way that you can do is once properly get your gold weight. Don't think, oh, approximately, I think. Estimated, shayad itna ho. Don't say that, because it's a faridah. It's an obligation. It is something which is fard upon us to know how to do it properly. If you can, then subhanAllah, if you know some pharmacists, they have these little scales that you can even use for them, and they can measure anything. So you even have to go to a jeweler. If you can have access to a jeweler, you can go ahead and they can even deduct the pearls and all the stones from that, and they can only exactly tell you the amount of gold that you have. But get it done once, so you securely know how much grams of gold or silver you have in your possession. Then you can add and subtract every single year. So now when the 15th of Ramadan comes to me, person A, what I will do is, I will check the amount of gold that I have. It's these many grams. I will check the price of gold for the 15th of Ramadan. Not the day that I bought this gold, but that 15th day of Ramadan, I will multiply it according to that. That day, I'm going to go and look at my 401k. I don't got none. So now, then you look at your assets, your stocks, or and see what's the face value. Then you look towards your property. If you have a certain property in which you know that this is the value of it, or it's going to be sold at that much amount. And again, the property which has been there for you to resell, meaning all of that. You're going to count the value of all of your assets on that day that you chose as the day of zakat. So the choosing of the day of zakat is the most important thing for all of us sitting here. For all of us sitting here, the most important thing for us is to know when I have to give my zakat. Don't generalize, my zakat is in Ramadan. A lot of people say, my zakat is in Ramadan. May Allah reward you for even doing this. May Allah be pleased with all of us for even doing this much. But to do it properly, choose one day. This is the most appropriate way, and the safest way for us is to choose one specific day to be that. So now the fluctuations will occur, and that's perfectly fine. Now let's get to a little bit more detail and math. What is the nisab? How do I count the quantum, the nisab, or the way that I will know that I have to give zakat, and who can take zakat and who cannot take zakat? This number we get from the hadith of Rasulullah. This is not made by me. These are the numbers that we find from the teachings of Rasulullah. The Nabi of Allah said the nisab and the quantum of gold, and according to the English terms in grams, is 87.48 grams. 87.48 grams is the nisab of gold. And the nisab of silver is 612.36 grams. In back in our countries, they say 7.5 tolas of gold and 52.5 tolas of silver. Right? But tolas translated into grams, 87.48 grams of gold and 612.36 grams of silver. Now, subhanAllah, a tough point comes. And I want you all to be with me. If I don't clarify myself enough, please ask, because this is very critical. If you look at the prices of these two nisabs now, both of them have been mentioned in the hadith of Rasulullah. If you look at the prices of this nisab, I don't have the current price for today. I have the price for June 18th. June 18th, few days back, I have the price from June 18th. The price for June 18th on the two nisabs for the gold, 874.48 grams, the price of that nisab was $3,371.48. $3,371.48 was the nisab of gold on June 18th. The nisab for silver on June 18th was $318.43. $318.43. So the gold nisab was 3,371.48. Silver on the other side is 318.43. If you look at these two nisabs, there's a huge difference, right? 3,371, 318. There's a huge gap between the nisab. Which one do I choose to give zakat? Which one do I see in order to give zakat to others as well, right? Now this is a critical question. According to jurists, according to fuqaha, and this is something a little complicated to understand, but inshallah you will be able to. According to fuqaha and jurists, If an individual only has possession of gold, they have no other mal, they have no silver, no property, no cash, nothing. The only possession that individual has is gold. Bas. That's the only thing that they have. For that individual, they will give zakat according to the nisab of gold. They will keep criteria of gold as their standard. Meaning if their gold values to be more than $3,371, then they will give zakat on the entire gold that they have. Not minusing this nisab. The whole gold that they have. If their gold is more than that. Second thing, and this is important. If a person, and that's many of us, almost all of us, have possession of gold, silver, cash, investments, properties, meaning we have multiple amounts of wealth, meaning different types of wealth. If someone has gold, and they also have $5 in their pocket, meaning they have wealth as currency, cash, and other ways plus gold as well. So meaning everything is mixed together. It's not only exclusively gold, it's all mixed. For that individual, they will take the nisab, whichever one is lower in price. They will take the nisab of whatever is lower in price. And why? Because the hadith of Rasulullah ﷺ and the fuqaha mention, أَنْفَعَ لِلْفُقَرَةِ, because it's the most beneficial for the poor. Because if we keep the lesser as the criteria, many people will give zakat. Many people will give zakat. So now the case being now that gold is 318 and silver is 3,371, the nisab for this year, for those who have to give zakat, who have multiple types of wealth, will be $318.48, approximately $320. If you're a Muslim, if you're an adult, if you're sane, and you don't have liabilities and debts which increase to be more than $320, you have zakat obligatory upon you. It's a simple rule like that. So now we realize Hawl is one recurring year in the lunar month. Nisab is a set amount by the Nabi of Allah ﷺ upon whom the zakat becomes mandatory. Few things regarding the payments of zakat. Zakat should be given as soon as it becomes mandatory upon an individual. Many times we hold our zakat for a very long time. We should try to give it as quickly as possible. One other thing, you're holding on to zakat and you're waiting for the right individual to come, that's perfectly fine. But it's good to give zakat as quickly as possible, as early as possible. Second thing, these are all points regarding giving zakat. You can give your zakat in advance. For example, 6 months ago, and again, your date of Ramadan, this is just as an example, for all of us today, it's 15th of Ramadan, because I keep on saying that. So imagine 6 months ago, you received a call from a relative who was extremely in need of zakat. And you hadn't taken out your zakat at that time because you do it on the 15th of Ramadan. So you, knowing that this person is eligible, you gave them $1,000 of your zakat. You send them early. Now 6 months later, the 15th of Ramadan comes, you calculate your zakat, and your zakat turns out to be $1,200. In this case, you will subtract the 1,000 that you have given before, and you will just give 200, which is remaining, and your zakat will be okay. You can give zakat in advance if you want. But the only thing is that when the day of your zakat comes, the 15th of Ramadan every year, you must audit and you calculate yourself and make sure that you gave enough. If it was more, alhamdulillah. If it wasn't more, then we make the leftover, and you must give the one which is left. So we should give zakat as quickly as possible when it becomes due. You can give your zakat in advance. Second thing is, a poor man cannot be paid for their services or their compensation as zakat. A person worked for you, they worked hard, and they earned a salary. And rather than just giving them a salary, you gave them their wages through zakat. Wages and compensation of individuals cannot be paid through zakat. Zakat can only be valid when it's given upon unconditional ownership. You cannot put ownership upon a person. I give you zakat, but you got to do with this money. You got to do this with the money. I give you this zakat, and you're going to make this zakat pure for me and return it back to my investments. Right? There are so many people, Allahu Akbar. A person is building a structure, they want to do it on zakat, they can't build it on zakat. They're going to find a poor person, they're going to give him that money, they're going to force him. Take half of it and rest you're going to recycle to make it permissible for me to make that. This is not acceptable. No conditions upon the person who takes zakat. If they do it on their own, alhamdulillah. Unconditional zakat. Yes, zakat can be given in other means. It doesn't have to be only money. It can be in other ways. For example, subhanAllah, a few years back I was sitting with one of the brothers and Allah had gifted him with lots of wealth. May Allah increase all of us, inshallah, and give barakah in our lives and our wealth as well. So this person gave tons of zakat every year. But he said, you know what? I want to make my zakat more productive. He said, I give zakat every year, but people use the money and it's not productive. He says, let's do something. I want to do something productive. So he came to me and he says, you know what? Can I actually buy sewing machines for women who actually can sew with that and make money and make an earning for themselves and continuous earning for their families, and they can also be content that they have something. So giving them something of value and possession, which they can continuously earn from, that's perfectly permissible. A person is poor and a person says, you know what, I'm going to buy you a rickshaw or something. And you can drive that. I can buy you a bike or something. You can ride that and transport something. So that money is spent in something which is productive, and he and she is not depending upon anyone else for further years. And mashallah, they are recurring their own income for afterwards. So that's perfectly fine, so long as the things that you provide them is of value. It's of monetary value. That's fine as well. Regarding students, for example, if there are two types of students who so-called eligible or not eligible. A child who is not baligh, meaning not an adult. A child is not an adult, he's a young child who has not reached the age of puberty. Can this child receive zakat for their education or not? Sometimes madrasas, institutions, colleges, can they receive zakat or not? Of course, the first criteria is to make sure the nisab. For a child who's not baligh, you're going to look at their parents. If their parents are eligible for zakat, that child can also take zakat. If the parents are not eligible for zakat, that little child is not eligible for zakat as well. A child is already an adult. A child has reached the age of puberty, they're adults. In that case, you will not look at their parents. The parents may be or may not be eligible for zakat, that doesn't matter. You will look at that child's condition themselves, as long as they are adults. If they have nisab, then they are not eligible. If they don't have the nisab, then they are eligible to receive the zakat. So these are the two concepts that we must understand. If a child is not baligh and not an adult, you will look at the monetary aspects of their parents. If the child is an adult, then you will look at them individually to give zakat as well. A person gives zakat to someone and says, make sure you give my zakat to a certain individual, and they lose it. It's your responsibility to make sure that the zakat is paid again. A person gives zakat to an individual thinking that they were eligible, but not making enough effort. Afterwards realizing that this guy is already rich, they have money. In that case, zakat becomes mandatory upon you as well. So make sure that you are giving zakat in the proper way, and make sure that you are giving zakat in the way that the person who are receiving are eligible, which we'll be speaking about now at the moment. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defines 8 types of individuals who can take zakats. This in Arabic is known as masarif, the way where you can spend the money. The first type of individual that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran are al-fuqara. And we need a little bit of inshallah, thought to understand this. And this is a little complicated. The first type of individual Allah mentions who can take zakat in the Quran is al-fuqara. What is a faqir in Arabic? The word fuqara in Arabic is defined as that individual who has bare minimum to survive upon. Meaning he or she has a roof to live in. And I say this again, very, very careful, because this question is going to come up. He or she has a roof to live in. Meaning they have a small house of their own. And this is their own property, no problem. They have bare amount of food to survive upon us. Only enough that they can eat, nothing to be saved. And when the end of the day comes, or the time of the zakat comes, they have no savings upon themselves. They have a roof to live underneath. They have food to eat. They have the needs and necessities that a household has, but they can barely make the ends meet. This in Arabic is known as faqir, al-fuqara. You will find many people ask, can I give zakat to someone who has their own house? If all the other conditions, meaning
Their needs and necessities are being met, but at the end of nisab, they don't have the amount of nisab, which is about $320. They can, even though they have their own house, because they fall in the criteria of al-fuqara. So fuqara in Arabic are those who might have their own roof, they might have bare needs and necessities of their household, but they can barely make the ends meet at the end of the month, and they can barely survive. A person earns, example, $1,500 a month. That's the only earning he or she has. They give $1,000 of rent. At the end of the month, they buy $300 of grocery. $200 of expenses go anywhere else. They have no other gold and cash and silver. At the end of the month, they barely have nothing. Just as an example. This is an example for an individual. At the end of the month, they have nothing. So when the end of the year comes, they have no savings. This is known as faqir in Arabic. You can give them zakat. Secondly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions wal-masakin, al-fuqara wal-masakin. The second word that Allah uses is masakin. The word masakin are translated as those individuals who are destitute. Bare hunger and nothing. No roof, no food, no house, nothing. These are known as masakin. And of course, they don't have no nisab, so they can take zakat. So Allah mentions fuqara as the first, masakin as second. The third thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, wal-amilin. Wal-amilin needs a little bit more explanation. In the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because there was a set amount of an Islamic place, government was running, the entire rules were run through one individual, and there was a Baitul Ma'ala, a place where the wealth was accumulated, the poor were helped. So there were certain individuals who were sent by the Prophet ﷺ, and of course after by the Khulafa, to go to localities and collect zakat on behalf of the Muslims and bring it back to the Muslims pool. They would help them calculate, they will make times out, and they will let them calculate that zakat. These individuals were known as amilin. So at that time of Rasulullah ﷺ, there was a set portion for these individuals. That a portion of zakat was given to them. But I want to make something clear. I might be opening up a can of worm here, but I have to speak for what I believe. Amilin are not corporate employees. Amilin are those who work for Muslim Ummah in general, which there is an establishment of Ummah. There is a pool of wealth where the money is being put in Baitul Mal and people are being helped. If you have an X company as a corporate company who's collecting zakat on someone and they are giving amilin, wallahu alam, you can discuss with scholars, but many of the ulama do not believe that these are considered as amilin. Amilin are considered to be those individuals set by a government to go help people calculate and do their zakat, do their math, sit down properly with them and let them know what is their zakat and bring it back. This is what amilin means, and of course this is a lot more detailed. I just want to go quickly through this. The fourth thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions is وَمُؤَلَّفَةُ الْقُلُوبِ. Those individuals who accepted Islam recently and now their families have abandoned them, the families have left them, no one wants to talk to them, no one wants to keep that relation with them. So the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would give a portion of the zakat of the wealth to mu'allafatul qulub, to win the hearts of these individuals, to make their hearts strong upon Islam, that we are your brothers to help you, to support you. So for those brothers and sisters who recently accepted Islam and their people have left them and they are also in the criteria of not above the nisab, the zakat can be given to these individuals. Ar-riqab are those individuals, and this is not at the time now, but the Quran mentions, that's why I want to explain this. When there was slavery, there were certain slaves who wanted to buy themselves out of slavery. The owner said, you give me this much money, you will be out of slavery. This was known as ar-riqab. So now, if there was a person who was a Muslim, an adult and sane, and this individual wanted to buy themselves out of slavery, an individual could give them money if they did not have nisab to buy themselves out of the slavery. This is known as riqab. So Allah mentions that as one of the criteria of zakat. The sixth things Allah mentions, al-gharimin. The gharimin word means those individuals who are drowning in debt. So much qarda, so much debt that they're drowning inside of it. And I want to take 2 minutes to explain this. What is debt? There are two types of debts upon us, or loans upon us. One is long-term loans and one is a short-term loan. Long-term loans and debts have no credibility in zakat. Meaning a person says, I have a long-term loan, brothers, I got to give $1 million for my mansion. I can't give zakat. No, sorry. You cannot deduct 30 years, 15 years, 10 years of your loans, which are long-term loans, as your deductions. The only things which you can deduct are your short-term loans. How do you define short-term loans? Scholars have differed in the length of short-term loans. What defines a short-term loans or a debt? Two opinions. First opinion, for example, 15th of Ramadan, you're giving zakat. Within the next 1 month, meaning until the 15th of Shawwal, you owe or you know that you have to give someone that much money. Meaning, you have to give your house rent, your mortgage, you have to give your taxes, you have to give that guy this much money. Within that 1 month of recurring time, you can deduct that as your liability, as your debt, as your loan upon you. 1 month of recurring time from your giving zakat. That's one opinion. Second opinion is you can deduct your loans and your liabilities for an entire year, 1 year. So for example, a person is planning to give back some money to an individual. During the course of that 1 year, you can deduct that. So the liabilities and for example, the person has to give a tax in 6 months. So they can deduct that as their liability. So the second opinion of the ulama is that the short-term loans which can be deducted as your liabilities is any loan or debt which is recurring in 1 year of time from the time that you are giving zakat. So this is the second type of those which are in debt. So you can help those individuals who are in debt, who have no nisab, and there is a burden upon them to give this. Seventh type of individual who can receive zakat, which Allah mentions, and this is a very tough one, is called fi sabilillah, for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, what does it mean for the cause of Allah? There's a huge debate to this. Scholars from more than 1400 years have been mentioning that this refers to the carrying out of the faraiz and the obligations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I know, because I don't want to hide things from the community and let them know, few years back there was a fatwa which came out from California. I'm not giving out names. A fatwa came out in which a Muslim scholar wrote that you can give zakat in the aspects of fi sabilillah to build masjids. Because when you live in countries in the Western world, and when you are in places where Islam is not dominant, and it's not in majority, so if you're building a masjid, you're doing something for the cause of Allah. So you can use your assets to build a masjid. And of course, a majority of the scholars disagree with this opinion. A few things that I share with you. If fi sabilillah was something which can be taken as anything for the sake of Allah, then why does the Quran mention 7 other criteria? Something to think about. The Quran mentions al-fuqara wal-masakin wal-amilin wal-mu'allafat al-qulub wal-riqab, and all of these 8 criteria Allah mentions in the Quran. If everything was to be fit in fi sabilillah, then why Allah would mention 8 different categories? There has to be designations. There has to be specific criteria. A person came to me and says, Mufti Sahab, I have a relative who is in extreme need, and this guy is legit in need, but he doesn't fit in the criteria of zakat. He has more than $320. Please tell me how I can give my zakat to him. Allahu Akbar. He says, please tell me how I can give my zakat to this guy. I want to really help him, but please tell him he's not eligible for zakat, but let me know how I can help him through zakat. I asked him, I said, brother, the 97.5 that Allah has given you in your pocket, give a little bit of that to him. The 97.5 is still in your pocket, bro. 2.5 is what you are giving for the sake of Allah in zakat. The 97.5 that Allah gave you, take a little bit of that and give it to your relative, man, who's not in zakat. And I say this, when the house of Allah, Baytullah, was being made, the people of Quraysh did not complete the hatim. They did not complete the hatim. For what reason? The people of Quraysh did not have pure and tayyib mal at that time. So they left it. That we don't have tayyib mal to make the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I was reading the history of how the masjid of Rasulullah was constructed. Allahu Akbar. We only have the time that how the Ottomans actually gathered individuals, and then from those individuals they chose their children, that from the time of their birth who were nourished from halal wealth, and from the day one that they were never open to haram and evil, and they were born with Quran and Sunnah and Hadith in their life, and they were the most purest of the individuals on the face of this earth who built the Masjid of Rasulullah with their own hands. If you ever read the history of Masjid Nabi, Allahu Akbar, I have that, inshallah, I can send it to some of the brothers, you can share. Wallahi, you will be surprised. The Khalifa of the time in the Ottomans, he actually settled a place, a town next to Medina, where all the heavy duty work was done, so no noise is erupted near the Masjid of Rasulullah. The way that he made that masjid. And for those brothers and sisters who have gone, and may Allah take us again and again, when you go to the old masjid of Masjid Nabi, wallahi, there's a different noor of salat there. You can mix, the whole masjid of Nabi is full of noor. But the feelings you get when you're right next to the Rawda nearby is amazing, which cannot be felt anywhere else. But anyway, the Ummah for centuries had used the purest of their wealth for the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? For centuries, the Ummah had used the purest for what they had for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And wallahi, I still know that Allah has given our Ummah more than any time before. And there's no lack of what our Ummah has, the Muslim Ummah has. It's the lack of our heart that has become. That wallahi, we still have that much, or even more than that. But the feelings of hearts have changed. But for centuries, the Ummah used the most purest of their wealth for the houses of Allah. And I don't want to further elaborate. Last thing, the eighth thing that Allah mentions for those who can take zakat is wabn as-sabil. For those who are travelers. How do you define wabn as-sabil? Scholars have mentioned there is an individual who lives in locality A, and he became a musafir and he traveled to locality B, far away from his house or her house. When they got to locality B, they lost all context, all relation with their relatives. They're unable to go back to A. They are stopped in place B. They have no access to their wealth. This guy was a rich guy. They have so much wealth. They had so much things when they were in location B. But now they are stopped in location B. Now they cannot go back to their wealth, no money. They cannot get in touch with their relatives. This individual in Arabic is known as wabna sabil. Wabna meaning a child, sabil means a path, a person on the street. So now this individual can also be helped. But we need to also be very, very careful, brothers and sisters. A time now that technology is so fast, we have our ATM cards, we have our debit cards, we have access to our banks anywhere that we go around the globe and the world. And let not, and I say this clear, and forgive me for saying this, let not anyone else use the name of Islam to rip your pockets off. Many individuals will come and will say, brother, we are in need. And I'm no one to judge anyone, forgive me. But I do not want us to become so naive of doing this without knowing for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rasulullah said, a mu'min is a man who never gets bit from a hole twice. Oh, Rasulullah said, we got to be a little careful for what we do. So we need to be careful for who has access and who doesn't have access to this. Next, who can we give zakat to? A person can give zakat to their brother, their sisters, their nephews, their nieces. Giving to your loved ones, meaning your relatives, is the most rewarding. Rasulullah said, give to your relatives because of double ajr and reward. Kinship, meaning relationship, and second, you're giving it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you look for zakat, look for those brothers and sisters in your relationships and your relatives who are in the most need. Inshallah, you'll get the double reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So brothers, sisters, nephews, and nieces, meaning children of your brothers and sisters, your nephews, your nieces, your uncles and your aunts, be it paternal or maternal. As they say, Puppo or Khala or Mamu or Chacha. Paternal, maternal. Meaning your brothers, your father's brothers, your father's sisters, your mother's brothers or your mother's sisters. All of these relations can take zakat. You can give them zakat as relations. You can also give it to step relationships. Meaning they are not your real, but step grandparents. And of course, father-in-law and mother-in-law. And I don't like the word in-laws as well. It's only if you're in good relations with them, inshallah. I guess you can give them. But father-in-law and mother-in-law, inshallah, it's also relationships you can give them as well, inshallah. Zakat cannot be given to few individuals. Who are those? First, individuals who are asdad, sayyid, meaning they come from the beautiful lineage of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course, there is a detailed aspect to who are those specific lineage and which are those lineage and which Sahaba go back to that. So individuals who are known to be Sayyid, they come from the noble and the lineage family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are not eligible for zakat. And just to, subhanAllah, go back, I wanted to say this in the beginning, the word zakat is used in few places in the Quran as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions zakat in few places in the Quran as well. And the places that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, quickly share with you. In Surah A'la, verse number 14, Allah uses the word zakat as the means of purification. The word zakat in Arabic, in Surah A'la, in ayat number 14, Allah uses that as the means of purification. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also uses zakat as growth, as also to increase, also to flourish. That's why when a person purifies themselves, they say this is person zakiyun, as an individual of innocent character. When you find an individual with, innocent character, this is zaki admi. And if you use deep Urdu language itself in Arabic, zaki means an individual with an innocent character. So the aspect of zakat is purification, increasing in growth, and all of that. So the individuals who cannot take that are, of course, the Sayyid. Second in types of individual who cannot take zakat are your immediate ascending and descending relations. For example, father, grandfather, meaning ascending relation, or descending relations. Your son, your grandson, like that, ascending and descending relations. And husband and wife, they cannot give zakat to each other. So these are the relationships that they cannot give zakat. And of course, making sure the individual fits in the criteria of giving zakats. Zakat cannot be given to a non-Muslim. Zakat is something which has to be given to a Muslim. But again, we still have our 97.5 to give to many of those who are in need. Catastrophes, difficulties occur everywhere. If they are occurring in places where the people are not Muslims, we can give money for the sake of Allah, not being zakat, but charity and sadaqah. The Nabi of Allah ﷺ helped the poor of Mecca and Medina at the time when they were not even Muslims. So to give for the sake of Allah as being the makhluk and the creation of Allah, that's perfectly fine. We can definitely do so. Another thing is, and this might also be a little difficult for me to explain as well, zakat cannot be given to any place which is a public utility or waqf or public, public need and necessity. For example, a person says, I want to build a hospital with my zakat money. A person says, I want to build a school with my zakat money. These entities or lands are public utilities. Many a times you will see a person walk inside a hospital who's not eligible for zakat. Many a times you will see a child walking inside the school who's not eligible for zakat. So structures and public needs cannot be built through zakat. Yes, individuals can be helped. Now a question comes. How do institutions who take zakat operate? A quick thing. For example, a madrasa, an institution. I give you an example of my own self. I studied in an institution in Pakistan, in Binori in Karachi. When I took the admission to my institution, they gave me an application to fill out. And this is what I'm saying, how institutions take zakat. It's right or not right, Allah knows. I was given an application, I filled out the form, everything was filled out. No one asked me for how much money I have, how much money my parents have, anything like that, nothing was asked. At the end of the application, before I signed to get admitted to the institution, there was a fine line on top. It said, if I am eligible for zakat, I give the sole authority to the principal and the responsible people of this institution to collect zakat on my behalf and use it in any way that they want. So I'm agreeing on to the term and conditions of that institution. So now I sign that paper. If I'm eligible for zakat, I have given my authority to the principal or the eligible individual. If I'm not eligible for zakat, I have signed this paper and I got admitted. So now what institutions do is, many a times the children who are coming in there are eligible for zakat. And now if they were to take this individual child everywhere to collect the zakat with them, it will be difficult. So what now they do is that they take the authority from those children, and now they take that zakat money, which is collected on behalf of those children, and now it's refreshed in the system, and becomes pure to be used in any way that the institution wants. Be it the salaries of their teachers, be it the construction of their institutions, be it the buying of books or anything like that. So this is how institutions recycle. There's a huge debate even in Pakistan now where I studied and many other institutions. Scholars have mentioned that there are better ways to do it, but it's still very difficult to do so. But this is just something that I wanted to bring forth in your attention, that this is how institution usually accept zakats. Because zakat must become an ownership of an individual. That's why if a person says, I'm going to give the debts of that person who died, it's not permissible. Because the dead man cannot take ownership of wealth. So ownership of wealth must be transferred. A person said, I will buy the coffin and the shroud of the deceased. The zakat is not accepted. Because a deceased person cannot accept ownership of something. If there was a person who was alive and you were to buy them clothing, that's perfectly fine. But if a person has passed away, they are not taking ownership. So the essence of zakat is that you must transfer the ownership from yourself to another individual on a set amount on a set day. This is what zakat is. If the ownership is not transferred to an individual, then the zakat cannot be dealt as complete. So these are some of those issues, inshallah, which are just that I wanted to mention. There are a lot more things, but inshallah, I want to break off here now to take some questions, inshallah, related to the topics that we discussed, or individual questions that you might have, inshallah, we can also discuss. I know there are a lot of questions regarding some of the contemporary issues which are with us as well. Inshallah, we can take so as well. So from now, inshallah, at this moment, we can try to take some of the questions that we have, inshallah. Yes, in the back. Right. So, for example, a person has stocks with an individual. So, and again, I want to make this clear that my question and your question and my answer is not regarding your investment being permissible or not. It will all depend upon where the investment is. That's a separate question to itself. They say a Mufti needs to make sure that their answers are very clear. So we cannot give open judgments. Zakat itself related to stocks. Investments of stocks permissible. Where to invest, there's a whole different topic to itself. But now the aspects of ownership. Now when it comes to ownership of your stocks, there are a few things which needs to be looked at. First of all, the ownership of the stocks and how much of them are in your possession. And the face value of that stock on the day that you have to give zakat. So for example, you have X amount of stocks in the market. Now it's 15th of Ramadan, which is there. And now you look at all your stocks and your investments, and they come out to be X amount as face value of that stock that specific day. So the face value of that stock that day, you haven't bought it, you haven't traded it, you haven't bought it into your possession, but the exact face value of that stock will be accumulated every year into your zakatable wealth. So the face value of your stocks will be added into your zakatable assets every single year, not at the time of buying, not time of selling, but the face value of that stock on the day that you are giving zakat. Yes. Market value, sorry. Market value, sorry. Apologize. Market value. Market value. Yes. Right. So the question from the brother is that if a husband was Sayyid and the wife was not Sayyid, the husband passed away and the wife is there, so the lineage of Astat will go through the father, the genes of the father, and genealogy of the father. So a woman who is not a Sayyid, who was married to a Sayyid, their children might not be eligible for zakat because they were the children of a Sayyid, but the mother herself, meaning the wife of that person who was not a Sayyid, can receive zakat. That's fine for her. Yes. Brother Muhammad? Okay. So the question being, and I want to make the question clear before I answer. For example, you have an aunt. She is eligible for zakat, and she has two adult children who are also earning. Is it appropriate or okay for you to give your zakat money to that aunt? That's perfectly fine. It's not a must that a son has to give their zakat to their mother. And of course, they cannot, because a child cannot give zakat to their mother. And that's not acceptable as well. And she being a relative to you, that's definitely a reward for you. And in this condition, that specific way, if you give zakat to her, that's double reward for you in giving that. So children are not allowed to give zakat to their parents, and relatives can definitely give, so that's perfectly fine. Ji. Okay. Again, I want to make sure that I clarify the question before I answer. An individual has a store, a business. Within the business, there is merchandise, which is known as mali tijarat, the wealth of business. This inventory or merchandise which was in the store might not have been there for the entire year with them, meaning the store might have opened 6 months ago, and or maybe there's some stuff just came in yesterday, and the merchandise is sitting and it's their ownership. And subhanallah, this is generally for everything, not only merchandise, but for everything. All of your mal and all of your wealth does not have to pass an entire year in your possession. The amount of nisab must be with you during the course of the entire year. So for example, a woman had a piece of gold that she bought 2 days ago before giving zakat. She only had it for 2 days. It's not been a year since she had it, but she has other gold which is more than the nisab. She will give zakat on all the gold that she has, even though it's been only 2 days she bought that. An owner of a store has merchandise which just came in yesterday on the 14th of Ramadan. But the 15th of Ramadan, if he has the ownership of that merchandise, meaning he has paid off that merchandise, it's not that it's sitting there that he has to pay someone on that. He and she will have to give zakat on the entire merchandise, so long as all of their mal and wealth has been the amount of nisab for the entire year. As long as the minimum amount of nisab, which is 320, has been with someone for an entire year, no matter how the wealth came, and even if the money did not stay for an entire year. Because if we were to take account of every mal to be in our possession for 1 year, it will be very difficult. So for example, I have X amount of money today, and tomorrow I have X plus 1, and then I have X plus 2. Every single day, the money increases, decreases in my account. So now, for me to count every dollar that this has been 1 year and the other, that's an impossibility for us. And also the merchandise and material as well. So that's why the rule of that is that at least the minimum nisab, which is 320 for now, must have passed a hawl, which is an Islamic lunar calendar in one's possession. No matter what other things came and went, that will not have any differentiations. Yes. We'll take him first, inshallah. Ji. Ji. Are the coins themselves for the reasons of right, right. Right. So now are these things present with you for the reasons of selling or just as collection? Right. Right. So now in this specific case, the value of these coins will remain as what they are, as quarters and dimes and nickels, so long as you do not sell and make the money off of it. When the money is made off of it, then there will be zakat and accountability upon it. So long as it is with you for the reasons of collection and you haven't cashed in the value of them, you will only give zakat upon whatever value that they have as dollars or nickels or dimes at that moment. When you cash them out and you receive the money off of it, then it will become zakatable. Dividend. Yes. You would only give the zakat upon the dividends that you're receiving from them. You had a question. Right. You can give zakat at any time during the course of the year. You can give monthly zakat as well. So for example, for the whole month, you give 100, 100, 100 for the entire month. And when the 15th of Ramadan came, you calculated and it came out to be $1,200 that you gave. When you calculate your zakat, it comes out to be 1,200. That's perfectly fine. So you can give over time and that's perfectly fine. Yes. What's that? So now for the students themselves who are adults, they will be dealt separately from their parents. Their parents' monetary condition will not have any effect upon their child's zakat giving or taking. They are individuals, as total separate individuals. In that case, a child worked part-time and they earned an earning of more than $320. That's their savings at the end of the year. For the whole year, they had more than that in their savings. So long as he or she doesn't have student loans, so long as they don't have any other debts, and this is the only money which is in their possession, then in that case there is zakat even though they don't have any recurring income or salary which is coming to them. And the zakat will not only be after deducting that 320, it will be plus that 320. So for example, a child after the entire year of summer jobs and whatever work that they did, they had $500 and stayed with them for the entire year. Now when the 15th of Ramadan comes, he or she will see if I have any loans or any money that I have to give someone. If not, in that specific case, they will not deduct 320 minus 500. 500 minus 320, and they will give zakat upon 180. They will give zakat upon the entire 500, which will be bare minimum few dollars, 15 less than even that much dollars, not even that much money that they will give. So students who do not have any loans or debt, student loans, and that money has been in their possession for the entire year, then yes, in that case, they will have to give zakat upon them, even though they don't have a recurring salary coming in. If the parents pay on their behalf, that's fine as well. For example, if a woman, she has, the sister's question just came, maybe they already asked, but I think the questions might be there. If not, then inshallah, I'll answer that afterwards, inshallah. Someone, yes. I do not understand the details of it. Oh, retirement funds. Is it similar to your 401ks? Okay, so the way 401k goes is 401k itself is a voluntary savings plan, right? Any one of us who have a 401k has voluntarily accepted to be a part of it. We are not forced to be a part of it. So whenever a person voluntarily involves themselves in any saving plans, zakat becomes mandatory. So that's the first thing. And again, I don't speak about the detail aspects of where to invest 401k, because that's a whole different aspect to itself. That the main business of the company should be lawful, the company's illiquid assets, such as building and all of that, should be present. These are all details, minute details of the investment of the 401k. That's a different topic to itself. But when it comes regarding to the 401k itself, according to scholars, it's a voluntary action that we ourselves, our retirement plans that we get ourselves involved in. So the first aspect is there is zakat on 401k. That's first thing. Second question regarding the 401k is, upon which wealth will we calculate zakat on? And of course, there are two types of contributions to your 401k. First type of contribution is the employee's own contribution. That's your contribution. That's 100% your contributions. The second contribution is the match of your companies, and the company matches. And subhanAllah, sometimes when the company matches, what they do is that the matching is not completely transferred to your ownership, and this is called vesting, right? There takes a time in which that portion of the wealth vests inside your ownership. So for example, your 401k 10,000 is your personal contribution. That's 100% yours. The company says we are going to match 10,000. 5,000 they gave you ownership, and 5,000 they said it's vesting, meaning it's going to slowly contribute and it's going to get vested to your ownership. So, and usually that's sometimes. But usually, most of the time, the amount that the company contributes matches and completely becomes your ownership. Few times it takes vesting and it vests to you. So in that case, if it's vesting, so the amount which has already vested, which is only 5,000, it's the contribution from the company. So you'll give zakat on 15,000 rather than 20,000, which they have planned to give 5,000 more. If the entire contribution is complete, then you'll give upon the entire amount. So this is on which wealth do we need to give? Your contribution and the contribution of the company. If they have done completely complete, if they have vested something, then they vested one. Now, zakat, when it's supposed to be given, right? When it's zakat supposed to be given. First is zakat has to be given. Zakat has to be given on the contribution of yours and the company which has been vested, and of course the whole thing as well. When do I give zakat? Two options. First, every year when the 15th of Ramadan comes, and again I use the same date to make it clear. When the 15th of Ramadan comes upon you, you will look at your 401k. You will look at your retirement plans, you will look at your contribution, you will look at your company's contributions. And on the entire value which is present there at that moment, you will give zakat on that day, meaning the 15th of Ramadan. Second option, that day on the 15th of Ramadan, you will see your contribution, you will see your company's contribution, and you will write down the amount which is present that day. And you will keep on saving and storing this amount, meaning the digits, not the zakat. You will keep on remembering this amount. And when this 401k becomes mature, and you receive the complete ownership of it at 60, 59, 60, whatever age it is, when you receive the complete ownership of liquid cash in your hand, then you repay the zakat of all the previous years. Two options, and I repeat myself. First option, every single year when the day of your zakat comes, you give your zakat on that 401k, on the contribution of yours in the company. Even though you don't have the liquid cash, or you don't have the liquid assets to it. Second option is that you will give zakat when that comes to your possession completely of all the previous years, because that will be easier for you. But the better option is to give every year. You never know what can happen in our lives. Another thing to add on to that is, if you were to pull out your 401k now, you have at least 40% of taxes, penalties, even more that, premature thing. So you might only receive 60, 70 or whatever percent of that. So if I give zakat, do I pay upon after penalties and taxes, or do I give upon all? So in that case, if you are not pulling out your money in premature state, you will give zakat upon the entire thing. If you do take it out prematurely and you have to give taxes, then you have to give penalties, in that case you will give upon all that which is with you after the savings. Yes. So from that year on, it will be without the tax. From the previous years, it will be the entire value of it. So once the tax is deducted, when the tax is taken out, then from that time, it will be only after the taxes that you will pay the zakat upon itself. Yes. Uh, you have to go back in all the years that has been accumulating and pay back for the whole year because it's a voluntary act of savings plan. And it's with you every single year. It's your money. Yes. Right. Jazakallah khairan. Very good question. And I say this before I say this as a forward. This is my personal opinion. It's my personal opinion in that case. You should consult with other scholars as well. There are so many organizations who are collecting zakat and they're doing a wonderful job. They're doing a tremendous job out there, right? I personally myself cannot be in Burma. I personally myself cannot be in Syria. I cannot be in any place in the world where there are specific Muslims in need that I can help them. And they are in need. And it's my responsibility many a times that we need to get our mal and wealth to the right individuals so they get helped out. There are organizations out there who are doing a beautiful job of actually reaching out, going that far to these remote areas, places, and getting the wealth to these individuals. And may Allah reward them for all the good and khair that they do. The only thing that I usually get into topics and debates with them is the aspect of 7 to 8% of the corporate amount of zakat to be used for their salaries. That's the only issue that I have. I always request them that you are doing a wonderful job. You're doing a tremendous job. You're doing a beautiful job. And you're fulfilling a responsibility that a ummah has upon their shoulders. And may Allah reward you for all that you are doing. Why don't you set up a separate fund of sadaqat, meaning an open charity that can be used as that 7 to 8% to be used as the salaries of the corporate company. And 100% of the zakat can be given to the poor. If that sort of system can be built, then wallahi, these people are doing works which cannot be done by any other individual out there, you know. So they're doing great works and responsibilities, you know. So we need to be you know, that's my personal opinion towards that aspect. That if a person is doing that, then at least this much of the amount is not being utilized for the zakat at that time. I've spoken to some organization, they listen to me very carefully, and hopefully we are working upon solutions with some of these companies and mashallah, great organizations who are doing a wonderful job, and hopefully these changes will slowly come, that at least 100% of our money which is going to these organizations will be at least going to those who are in need rather than being used for the corporate salary. And of course, they need to also survive and take care of the needs that they are doing so, but there are other ways that they can actually pull up that money and use it for their needs. Yes. Again, as I mentioned in the beginning, an individual must become the owner of zakat in order for the zakat to be acceptable. If you give the zakat to a poor man, he takes the zakat and then himself willingly gives it to the hospital, he gives it to another organization to build something, that's perfectly fine. But as an institution, you cannot take zakat. Individual needs to take ownership. Yes. Again, what we need to know is at the time of that property being built or being bought, what was the exact intention? If the intention was that I'm going to sell this house, then every single year they would have to pay the zakat on what the value of that house is at that moment, even though he hasn't sold it. The value of that. If he or she wasn't sure that they were going to sell it, then there is no zakat. But if they were sure and they built it for the reason of selling, then they would have to give zakat even though they're unable to sell it for the previous years. You just go to a property dealer out there and tell them that what is the value of my house? What is my house going to sell it for? What's my house worth? Only if they had Zillow in Pakistan. You go Zillow and find out. Again, I don't know if you missed out in the beginning of what I was saying. Properties are of two types: rental properties, non-rental properties. Non-rental properties are of three types. Non-rental properties bought with the intention of reselling, intentions of keeping for themselves, intentions which a person doesn't know what to do. In first case, they have to give zakat. In the last two cases, they don't have to give zakat. So again, the property which was bought by an individual maybe a few years back for 30,000, what was their intention of buying that land? At the time of signing that paper, if they had bought it for the reason of reselling, then in that case, they have to give zakat. If they had bought it for the reason of keeping, not sure what I'm going to do with it, there is no zakat upon that. The current value, yes, the current value of it. Not the amount what they bought it. Anything which is a property. Current value, yes. The second question was what? Right. Okay. Right. Jazakallah for bringing that up. First of all, an orphan organization, and of course, Yatama and Masakin are some of those individuals who are in the most need of our help, for those who Allah has given. Again, as I mentioned this in the beginning, scholars have mentioned that institutions and organizations directly cannot receive zakat until they do not receive it through the consent of those who are fuqara, masakin, and poor people within themselves. So for example, that orphanage or the orphan organization you're talking about, if there are certain children in that organization who have given the consent, meaning if they are not baligh, they are not adult, their parents are also not eligible for zakat. If they are baligh already and they are also eligible, then they have given permission to the owner of that organization or the person who takes care of the organization that we give you this consent that you can collect zakat on our behalf and use it in any way. Then that man can collect that zakat and then use it for the necessities of those children. But if a person finds and knows that these people are deceiving and not using the wealth in the right way, then a person needs to be more careful for how they give their wealth, because we need to make sure that our zakat becomes 100% ownership of those which are in need. So if the beginning case, meaning the beginning case is that there are children who are eligible and they also fall in the criteria of being eligible as being adults, and also if they are adults, they are eligible. If they are children, their parents are also eligible. In the beginning, if they take all that zakat money as their possession and then they hand it over to the person who's the owner, our zakat is fulfilled. Then after that, if the person was to deceive, may Allah forgive, use it in any other ways of their own personal needs, that's their own amal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But making sure the first criteria and conditions are fulfilled. That the children who are present there, right. 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 The orphan children themselves sometimes might have no father or no mother. So what defines an orphan? No, I'm not sure. I'm sure. What defines orphan? So if this is a condition, if both of their parents are not there, and there's no one to take care of their needs and necessities, in that case, yes. If one of their parent is alive, then of course in scenarios that I'm mentioning. But in that specific case, yes. As long as the children take the possession of the wealth and then they give it to the needs of that institution, that's perfectly fine. Yes. Right. So in the case being that if she is receiving monetary help from other individuals, if she is okay and well to do for the needs of her house, meaning she's making her ends meet, and she's perfectly fine, then this would not be the first criteria for us. This would not be the first resort for us. Then we would look for other individuals who might be the closest in relation or even further away, but who might be in need and necessity. Yes. Okay. So if a person has missed their zakat in previous years, and this is also a debate now, is there any qada to fara'is? And now this, subhanAllah, is a new thing now, that there is no qada to fara'is. And scholars have mentioned that the farida and actions that were mandatory upon us and we were not able to fulfill, it's our responsibility to do so, right? That's why a person who hasn't done hajj when he's or she's passing away, it's amongst the actions to give wasiyat, to give enough money so people can do hajj on their behalf because it's a farida. So same way in qurbani and sacrifices and even in zakat, it's mandatory. So in that case, an individual will need to take out an approximate amount of their possession. Meaning last year approximately this is how much I made. Or if you can go back to your bank accounts and statements and see that around this much of the time in Ramadan last year, how much was in my possession. And of course, you won't know the exact details, but coming to the exact approximate estimation is what is required. How much money, how much gold that we have and sell and buy, and what were the other possessions that I had at the time. So coming to an estimated amount, more or less, will be something that you should do. Another thing that a person can always do is that, for example, if your zakat this year is $900, maybe if Allah has given you ability, give 1,000 and said, oh Allah, that 100 is just for any break that I had in the past that I couldn't give before. So just making up our qada is also very, very important for us. I'm just going to quickly take the questions from, yes. Dispensary services. Now, individuals who are coming into these dispensaries, are they all eligible for zakat or not? Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. For that, I was asking that individuals who come into the dispensary, are they all eligible for zakat or not? All right. As long as this eligibility is there and this announcement is clear and people know, that's perfectly fine. To give people their medications and their needs and necessities through the zakat who cannot afford, that's perfectly fine. Again, the aspect is individual who is eligible for zakat. If we give them the zakat money and they become the owner, they can use it for any condition. We cannot put a condition on zakat that this is zakat money that you must use for umrah. Meaning unconditional ownership must be given. If a person who is eligible for zakat, he or she takes that money and then they use it for anything. They use it for hajj, they use it for umrah, they use it for their food. It's up to them. It's their money. It's not zakat anymore for them. It's their money. So for us to give someone money in their ownership and they use it in any way, that's perfectly fine so long as they're eligible for zakat. Meaning, are the person who is going for Umrah and Zakat, do they know that this is Zakat money? Now, I'm asking this question to you. Are they taking the ownership of the money? Because ownership of the money is a must. You're buying them a ticket. You must make clear the ownership of anything to them, that this is your ownership. In the case of the case that a person wants to send them, the best aspect for that is that you may give them in the amount of cash and wealth and said, I wish that you can do umrah from this money that I have given you. You don't have to tell them this is zakat. You don't have to tell this individual this is zakat. Yes, you can request them that, brother, this is $2,000 that I share with you, and I would love for you to go to umrah with this money. You don't have to tell them that this is zakat. So long as they take that possession, they buy their ticket, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just going to read these questions quickly for them. Sister tries, how do we calculate zakat on these properties? If a person owns 2 houses where family lives, who are homeowners but have $250,000 loans, and a house is worth less than $400,000. So a property that a person lives upon and lives in, there is no zakat upon that. So the first question, where a family lives, who are the homeowners of that house, have $250,000 loan upon that house, and then of course a house is worth $400,000, there is no zakat upon the ownership of that house. You don't give zakat upon the ownership of that house. But if you have other wealth, meaning gold and silver and other possessions, you cannot deduct this loan that you have of $400,000 or $250,000 from your money. Your zakat on your gold, your silver will remain, and there will be no zakat on this house. As for what I understand from the question is, if a person owns 2 houses where person family lives and who are also the homeowners but have $250,000 left, you're not going to deduct this $250,000 as a liability or a debt upon you. You're going to pay zakat on your gold, your silver, and all the other possessions that you have. And you have a loan which is, a house is worth less than $400,000. In that case, there is no zakat on the ownership of the house. If you own $150,000 of that house, you don't have to pay that zakat on the ownership of the house. Even if you own the entire house which was worth $400,000, there's no zakat upon that if it's your own personal needs. But if you have any liabilities and debts, you're not going to deduct that. Second house also has mortgage loan and is collecting rent, which is barely paying mortgage and other bills. Owner has no profit and gain. In that case, there is no zakat on that second property as well. The second property where the mortgage is going, the rent is accumulating every month, and the rent which comes goes back to the mortgage payments every single month. At the end of the year, you have no profit left. Excuse me, there is no zakat on that second property as well. So there's no zakat on the second property. There's no zakat on your own property. The only thing that you will have zakat upon is that if you have any income left after the rent accumulation, if you have any money left at the end of the year from that, that will be added into your assets and you will give zakat upon that. Assalamu alaikum, sir. Please tell me which of my jewelry is liable for zakat. And if I have it weighed, is it weighed with the stones, diamonds, rubies, and including and derive the value? So again, the question is the gold, the silver. All of the gold and all the silver, which is the jewelry. The sister's question is, what of my jewelry? All the gold, all the silver, all the white gold, which you own, you will have to give zakat. Be it 14 carats, be it 18, 20, 22, 24, any carats, you have to give zakat. And you have to give zakat on the weight of the gold and the silver, and you will deduct the weight of the stones, the diamonds, the rubies. There will be no weight included with that. So that means you will have to deduct the weight of all the stones from that gold and that silver, and then you will give the zakat. And the zakat will be given on the price of the gold and the silver on the day that you are about to give zakat. It's not the day that you bought it. It's not the day any other day. It's the day that you're about to give zakat. That's the day that you will be calculating the amount of gold. So if I get this question clear, which of my jewelry? All of your jewelry. Jewelry that you use every day, jewelry that you barely use in a year. Every single thing that you have as your own jewelry, be it gold and silver. Of course, platinum will not be counted. Another precious metal will not be counted. White gold, gold, and of course silver, be it 14 carats and above, any carats, excluding the stones and diamonds and rubies, the amount of that in grams and the price that day. This is something which the zakat will be given upon, inshallah. Yes. Jazakallah khairan, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all you brothers and sisters for coming out and actually sitting down and listening to this topic. Sometimes just sitting here becomes very difficult for a very long time and to listen. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your efforts, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of us. Jazakallah khairan. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun al mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. So inshallah we have a live stream of this program as well. So if any brothers and sisters want to share it with their relatives, inshallah, they can hear them. Assalamu alaikum.